Lakshmi, the metaphysics of sacred richness. Welcome back to Ancient the Architect TV. Today we are entering one of the most beloved and most misunderstood divine principles in sacred tradition, Lakshmi. For many, Lakshmi is the goddess of wealth, prosperity, abundance, beauty, blessing, grace, fortune, and divine favor. She is invoked for increase. She is adored for nourishment. She is honored as the power that brings harmony into the home, peace into the heart, fertility into life, and beauty into manifestation. And yet, if we stop there, we have not yet reached the true depth of what Lakshmi is. Because Lakshmi is not merely a divine figure associated with outer riches. Lakshmi is the metaphysical law of sacred richness. She is not only the giver of blessing, she is the principle by which blessing becomes possible. She is not merely the one who bestows beauty. She is the law by which beauty arises from divine order. She is not merely the patroness of prosperity. She is the sacred fullness that makes true prosperity real in the first place. So in this episode, we are not going to reduce Lakshmi to superstition, nor are we going to reduce her to shallow symbolism. We are going to do what we do here on Ancient the Architect TV. We are going to enter the metaphysical architecture. We are going to uncover who Lakshmi is as a law of being, why she is associated with wealth and abundance, how she relates to the soul, how she becomes hidden in the lower nature, how she is recovered, how she purifies, how she beautifies, how she nourishes, and how she ultimately becomes the visible atmosphere of sacred order in life. Because if you truly understand Lakshmi, then you do not merely understand a goddess of blessing. You understand the inner law by which divine richness descends into manifestation. Lakshmi is one of the most beloved names in sacred devotion because the soul instinctively knows what she carries. Human beings long for fullness. They long for peace. They long for beauty. They long for order. They long for love. They long for blessing. They long for relief from barrenness. They long for some sign that life is not merely struggle, lack, dryness, and fragmentation. And so the heart reaches toward Lakshmi because Lakshmi represents the opposite of spiritual poverty. She represents plenitude. She represents grace. She represents beauty that is not artificial. She represents increase that is not merely greedy multiplication. She represents nourishment. She represents the feeling that divine life is not hostile to existence, but can actually clothe existence in harmony, loveliness, and richness. This is why worshippers love Lakshmi, not merely because of money, not merely because of fortune, but because at a deep level the soul recognizes in Lakshmi a principle of holy sufficiency. The soul feels that where Lakshmi is present, life flowers. Where Lakshmi is present, things become more beautiful, more graceful, more ordered, more fertile, more peaceful, more blessed. That intuition is true. But the metaphysical question is this: why? Why does Lakshmi produce that effect? Why is she associated with blessing, wealth, beauty, and abundance? And the answer is because Lakshmi is not first outer prosperity. Lakshmi is the inner law from which all true prosperity flows. The first great error is to think that Lakshmi is mainly about material wealth. Material wealth can be part of her outer expression, but it is not her essence. Because a person can have money and still be ugly in soul, restless in mind, polluted in heart, chaotic in environment, starved in spirit, and inwardly poor. That is not Lakshmi. A person can possess much and still be barren. A person can have status and still live in inward famine. A person can display beauty and still be internally disordered. So Lakshmi cannot be reduced to possession. True abundance is not first what you hold in your hand. It is what you carry in your being. Lakshmi is the law of sacred fullness. She is what happens when divine richness becomes inwardly receivable, inwardly livable, inwardly beautiful, and outwardly fruitful. This means that the visible things associated with her, wealth, blessing, radiance, beauty, increase, prosperity, graciousness, nourishment, are real, but they are effects, not first causes. Lakshmi is the cause. She is the hidden divine richness that later appears outwardly as peace, elegance, fruitfulness, holy order, noble love, right increase, and visible blessing. So if someone worships Lakshmi only for money, they are asking for the last shadow of her law while ignoring her essence. But if they seek Lakshmi as sacred richness itself, then even what appears materially may come forth in a truer way. Lakshmi is the principle of sacred richness, and sacred richness means this: the condition in which reality is no longer barren, fragmented, and dry, but becomes inwardly full, fertile, harmonious, luminous, and able to sustain life under divine order. Lakshmi is richness because she makes life capable of flowering. She is sacred because that richness is not random, not merely sensual, not egoic excess, and not greed. It is richness under divine law. This is why Lakshmi always carries with her an atmosphere of beauty and peace, because sacred richness does not appear as clutter, vulgarity, anxiety, and chaos. It appears as order. It appears as grace. It appears as refinement. It appears as radiance. It appears as the feeling that something in life has become properly aligned. So Lakshmi must be understood as the divine power through which the soul, the home, the field of life, and even manifestation itself become capable of bearing sacred order beautifully. This is why she belongs not only to abundance, but also to beauty, harmony, peace, and inner nobility. Now we go deeper. Lakshmi is not merely emotional sweetness. She is not sentimentality. She is not softness for its own sake. She is a principle of higher wisdom, not intellect in the ordinary sense, not discursive thought, not mere reasoning, but a superior wisdom that stands above the lower mind. This means Lakshmi belongs to that level of being where truth is not merely argued about, but inwardly known, inwardly received, inwardly born. She is the receptive richness of divine truth. She is the field in which higher reality becomes inwardly livable. This is why she is associated with beauty, love, and tenderness without being reducible to emotional weakness. Because true beauty comes from order, true peace comes from alignment, true love comes from purified richness, true abundance comes from participation in higher truth. Lakshmi, therefore, is not just the goddess of nice things. She is a law of spiritual substance. She is what allows the higher to descend without being immediately corrupted by the lower. She is what makes truth beautiful to the soul. She is what makes the divine not only feared, but loved. If Lakshmi is sacred richness, then why is life so often poor, chaotic, dry, ugly, conflicted, and barren? Because sacred richness becomes hidden in the lower condition. This is one of the deepest parts of the mystery. The soul carries hidden treasure, but in the descended state, that treasure is buried beneath desire, fragmentation, appetite, confusion, fear, emotional turbulence, vanity, and all the lower formations of consciousness. So Lakshmi is often present, but concealed. This means the human being lives in a strange contradiction. The soul is secretly rich, but outwardly poor. It carries a hidden treasury, but consciously lives in lack. It bears a law of beauty, but manifests ugliness. It longs for fullness, but keeps reaching for substitutes. That is why human beings chase counterfeit abundance. They seek stimulation instead of nourishment, possession instead of inward richness, luxury instead of sacred beauty, attention instead of radiance, emotional intensity instead of divine love. Why? Because Lakshmi is hidden, and when sacred richness is hidden, the lower self tries to imitate it. That is why so much of the world is full of false abundance. It is abundance without purity, abundance without order, abundance without peace, abundance without beauty, abundance without sanctity, which means it is not truly Lakshmi at all. So how is Lakshmi recovered? Not by shallow wishing, not by greed, not by merely asking for more things. Lakshmi is recovered through transformation. The lower nature must be worked upon. The soul must be stirred, purified, softened, opened, and prepared. The old hardness has to break. The old mixtures have to surface. The false attachments have to be exposed. The substitutes have to lose their glamour. The soul must begin to feel the poverty of what it once called abundance. This is why recovery is not comfortable at first. Because before the sacred richness rises, the lower impurities often surface. The person begins to see how mixed their motives were, how much vanity was in their beauty, how much hunger was in their love, how much insecurity was in their ambition, how much chaos was in their environment, how much lack was hiding underneath what they called success. But this exposure is not failure. It is the beginning of the recovery of Lakshmi. Because sacred richness cannot fully rise until the field is worked. Lakshmi is not only hidden treasure waiting to be recovered, she is also descending nourishment. She gathers above the lower soul as sacred possibility, then descends as truth, peace, intuition, beauty, and holy moisture. This is why Lakshmi can be understood as a principle of spiritual rain. What does rain do? It softens the earth. It penetrates hardness. It nourishes seed. It makes barren ground fertile. And that is exactly what Lakshmi does in the soul. She descends into the emotional field. She descends into thought. She descends into atmosphere. She descends into the field of life. And when she descends, what was hard begins to soften. What was dry begins to live again. What was hidden begins to germinate. What was spiritually starved begins to be fed. This is why Lakshmi is not merely beauty after the work is done. She is also the living nourishment during the process. One of the most powerful metaphysical insights about Lakshmi is that she is present not only in the flower, but in the preparation of the field. People often want abundance while remaining inwardly unprepared for it. They want blessing while remaining disordered. They want beauty while remaining mixed. They want prosperity while remaining spiritually polluted. They want fruit while refusing cultivation. But Lakshmi is a lawful abundance, so the lower nature must become fit. The field must be opened. The soul must become receptive. The emotional life must be softened. The mind must become clearer. The environment must become more orderly. Speech must become cleaner. Memory must become less poisonous. Desire must begin to transform. This is all part of Lakshmi. She prepares. She cultivates. She shapes the lower nature so that sacred richness can finally live there. So if your life is in a season of preparation, do not imagine Lakshmi is absent. She may already be there in the furrow, in the clearing, in the softening, in the restructuring, in the making ready, because true abundance begins in capacity. This is where many people lose the mystery. They want Lakshmi without purification, but sacred richness cannot remain mixed. If the vessel is polluted, the abundance becomes corrupted. So Lakshmi is not only a bestower of blessing, she is a purifier. She cleanses emotional mixture. She cleanses vanity out of beauty. She cleanses hunger out of affection. She cleanses self-serving motives out of devotion. She cleanses greed out of abundance. She cleanses inner disorder so that peace can remain. She cleanses the field so that what appears as blessing is actually sacred, and not merely inflated lower desire. This is why Lakshmi belongs to cleanness, freshness, order, sacred atmosphere, and graceful purity. Not because she is moralistic, but because abundance without purification becomes vulgarity. So wherever life becomes more clean, more ordered, more beautiful in a true sense, more peaceful, more refined, more consecrated, Lakshmi is already operating. Sacred richness cannot remain diffused. It must gather around a center. That center is the divine principle within the soul, the indwelling sovereignty that orders, governs, and restores. Lakshmi allies herself with that center. This is why her richness is not merely soft or passive. It becomes royal. It becomes ordered. It becomes sovereign beauty, not beauty without rule, not tenderness without truth, not abundance without structure. Lakshmi crowns rightful divine order within the soul. She makes the higher center beautiful to the heart. She makes the soul actually want to live under divine law. This is one of the deepest mysteries. Lakshmi makes holiness lovable. She makes truth beautiful. She makes order desirable. She makes purity attractive. She makes divine sovereignty feel like home instead of oppression. This is why she is so important, because the soul is not restored by command alone. It is restored when the higher order becomes inwardly more beautiful than the lower disorder. That is Lakshmi. Now we come to one of the most extraordinary dimensions. Lakshmi transforms emotion itself. She does not merely tell the emotional life to behave better. She changes its substance. Under Lakshmi, love is no longer clinging. Tenderness is no longer weakness. Beauty is no longer vanity. Sensitivity is no longer fragility. Devotion is no longer dependency. Peace is no longer passivity. Everything becomes transmuted. The emotional life becomes radiant. The soul becomes fragrant. The person begins to carry an atmosphere. Presence itself becomes more beautiful, more graceful, more nourishing. This is why Lakshmi is associated with splendor, not because she is superficial ornament, but because when sacred richness really enters the emotional field, the soul begins to wear another atmosphere. That is the robe of glory. The person becomes inwardly clothed in peace, beauty, tenderness, and luminous order. And that changes everything. Speech changes, presence changes, the home changes, the environment changes, the whole style of being changes. That is real Lakshmi. So now we can answer the great question. What is abundance? Abundance is not simply having more. Abundance is when divine richness has entered a field deeply enough that life becomes fruitful, beautiful, nourishing, ordered, and able to overflow without corruption. A truly abundant person is not merely one who possesses much. A truly abundant person is one whose being has become rich in truth, peace, beauty, purity, atmosphere, fruitfulness, and sacred order. That may then produce outer prosperity. It may produce gracious environment. It may produce visible blessing. It may produce increase in the home, in the field of work, in relationships, in nourishment, in stability, in influence, in provision. Yes, but these outer things are valid only if they remain tied to the inner law. Otherwise, they are counterfeit abundance. So Lakshmi is not anti-wealth, but she is against false wealth. She is against abundance severed from sacred order. She is against beauty severed from purity. She is against prosperity severed from truth. She is against increase severed from divine law. Because that is not abundance, that is inflation. Lakshmi is abundance that is still holy. Now let us return to the devotional worshipper. Why does devotion to Lakshmi matter? Because devotion is not merely asking for gifts. True devotion aligns the soul to the principle. If one worships Lakshmi rightly, one is not merely saying, "Give me money." One is saying, "Make my field beautiful, make my being receptive, cleanse my mixture, order my life, nourish my heart, purify my desire, Restore my hidden richness. Make me fertile to truth. Make my home an atmosphere of sacred beauty. Make my soul capable of carrying divine abundance without corruption. That is true Lakshmi devotion. And when that happens, outer blessings may come in a lawful way because the inner field has become able to hold them. So the religious worshipper is not wrong to love Lakshmi. The worshipper is responding to something real. What the metaphysician must do is reveal what that devotion is touching at its deepest level. Lakshmi devotion is devotion to sacred richness. It is devotion to divine beauty, divine order, divine plenitude, divine nourishment, divine peace, divine fruitfulness, divine atmosphere. So the worshipper and the metaphysician do not need to be enemies. They meet in Lakshmi when both understand that outer blessing is the visible language of an inward metaphysical law. So who is Lakshmi? Lakshmi is the sacred richness by which the divine becomes inwardly livable. She is the beauty of truth received, the peace of higher order embodied, the abundance of a soul no longer governed by lack, the hidden treasure buried beneath the lower nature, the rain that nourishes the field, the wisdom that purifies the vessel, the grace that beautifies divine rule, the radiance that clothes the transmuted heart, the fruitfulness that turns sacred order into visible blessing. She is not merely wealth. She is the law behind all true wealth. She is not merely beauty. She is the law by which beauty becomes sacred. She is not merely prosperity. She is the divine fullness by which life becomes capable of true prosperity without losing its soul. That is Lakshmi. And until the soul understands abundance in that way, it will continue to chase substitutes. But once Lakshmi is understood metaphysically, the whole search changes. Now one seeks not simply more. One seeks sacred richness. One seeks to become the kind of field in which divine plenitude can dwell beautifully. So if Lakshmi has been presented to you only as the goddess of money, now you know that the mystery is far deeper. And if you have loved Lakshmi devotionally, then perhaps now you can love her with even greater depth, because what you love is not less than blessing, but more than blessing. You love the divine law of sacred richness itself. You love the principle by which life becomes beautiful, peace-bearing, fruitful, ordered, radiant, and blessed under the higher. And that is why Lakshmi matters, not only to religion, not only to worship, but to metaphysics, to the soul, to sacred embodiment, and to the recovery of divine abundance in human life. This is Ancient the Architect TV. If this episode opened the mystery for you, stay with me, because we are not here for surface symbolism. We are here to recover the architecture of reality. And today, we have entered one of its most beautiful laws, Lakshmi.